Most tax pros leave a message.
It's Jane. I'm moving on to a TurboTax expert who beat your price. Adam Devine, tell him how I feel.
Hey, tax pro, she's been thinking twice. Best believe TurboTax will beat your price. This is a tax break.
Switch to a TurboTax Live expert and we'll beat what you paid your pro last tax season. Make the switch at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice. TurboTax full service only. Sign up by 12/20/2024 and file by 4/1/2025. Full details at TurboTax.com/beatyourprice.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
Everybody, and welcome to another episode of Horror Movie Night. We are in the thick of Halloween season, and we are tackling one that I cannot believe we haven't gotten to sooner with The Craft, a big film of the 90s for pretty much every person on here. And Kyle, I have to pass the mic to you because A, you picked this one, and B, you got us a hell of a guest on this episode of The Craft.
I did. I think it must have been the spirits. There must have been some sort of spell that allowed Horror Movie Night to get threefold good karma back because I've been fortunate enough to work with writer of The Craft, Peter Filardi, who is joining us here on Horror Movie Night. So let's say hello, Peter.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Hello, horror fans. Great to be here. With my buddy Kyle, who is a filmmaker and is quite the filmmaker in his own right, has been kind enough to help me out as AD on 2 shorts.
And we've had a hell of a time. It's been a joy. So
yeah, you saved my butt a couple times, so I do appreciate it. Don't think I didn't notice.
This is the Craft / Kyle Cooked appreciation episode.
Yeah, well, that's very sweet. That's very sweet. We won't do too much of that. But thank you, and I'm so glad that you said yes. Because we are as we'll talk about The Craft obviously, but then we'll also discuss the short film. So this is going to be a full on episode. But per usual order of things, I will give a small synopsis of The Craft for anybody who, for the uninitiated, as Scott likes to say.
If you haven't seen The Craft, pause the episode and watch it, because I don't know how you found our podcast but hadn't seen The Craft yet.
For real.
But The Craft came out in 1996. It is a teen witch supernatural teen horror with just the best witches, the best coven of witches that could possibly have come out of 96. But it follows Sarah, who is a teenage girl who relocates with her family to a new town, a new house, a new school, and quickly comes into the under the wing of a new set of friends who happen to be, as we'll call them, the weirdos. It is Farutha Balk, Nev Campbell, Rachel True. Robin Tooney plays Sarah. And it is really a tale of sisterhood that goes awry in true supernatural sense as Robin brings her new supernatural ability to this already sort of practicing hokey coven of young teen girls who are trying to explore Wicca and witchcraft and the spirits and energy and so on. And as things go well for them, because they're all looking to either seek a little bit of revenge or get a boy to like them or various other things. As we find out, the spirits do come back threefold, and there's a yin and yang here, and hell starts to truly break loose as Fairuza Balk, whose character's name completely escapes me. Forgive
Nancy
me.
Downs.
Thank you, Nancy. As Nancy gets a little power hungry, but Robin is still the one with the powers truly at B. So there's a little bit of a power struggle that culminates in almost Los Angeles being just destroyed. It seems like by this teenage coven. It's such a lovely movie. It really does scream 90s in some of the best ways to me, and I think it actually resonates quite realistically now with so much talk of astrology and witchcraft still, or Wicca, and sort of just the outlying trends and religions still being popular here. So that is my, there's a lot more on Wikipedia or IMDb if you didn't want to listen to me talk about it. But we also have the man with the plan here, Peter, who wrote it. So you had the story, and then you had a co-writer as well?
Yeah, I wrote, it was my idea, and I wrote, 2 or 3 drafts, and I had an ending that was different than what you see in the film, and the studio didn't want to really do that. They thought it was a little dark. And
do you mind telling us what the original ending was?
Well, let's see. Actually, all the girls died except Rachel, the diver.
Right. Interesting.
So they sank. They were chased by the high school powers that be out into the La Brea tar pits, and they sank.
The tar pits.
Trying to flee across the tar pits, and they sank. And as they did, though, they hurled a final curse at their classmates, which came to fruition at the very end. So,
man, that would have been a pretty cool alternate reality.
They had their rift, but they came together again.
As cool as that ending sounds, I get why the studio pushed against it, especially when you think about the time period where like horror's in such a weird spot in like 94, 95, right? And I think about, it's shocking to me that we covered The Covenant before we covered The Craft, but
Peter should know that we mostly don't discuss perfect movies. So
yeah, we don't discuss good movies, but like my point being, when you look at The Covenant, I can kind of see what a studio would have seen as a safer option for something like The Craft, where The Covenant is this like kind of sexy PG-13, like, is it a horror movie? It's a little bit more of like a teen fantasy movie involving, warlocks. And it's like, I could see in 1994, 1995, a studio being like, those teen flicks are doing really well. What if we don't have a dour ending?
Right.
And we push
Peter,
more towards that demographic.
I have a question actually about some of that, because Matt brings up a good point, but he also did say a magic word for us, and we had, Peter, I had said that to you that we would pick a accompanying drink. You had a great suggestion of red wine. I looked downstairs and I did not have the red wine available, but I did have warlock, because if we were male witches, we would be warlocks. So that is our accompanying drink today. But I wonder, Peter, did you have, was that a battle that you had to fight a lot? Was there a lot of like, that's too dark, reel it in, or was there ending aside?
Well, there's always a lot of screenwriting, filmmaking is a very collaborative process. So I went in and met with the producer, Doug Wick, and he had seen, he was a fan of Flatliners, a film I had written a couple years earlier. And he said he was interested in either doing a haunted house story or a witch story. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I was doing a lot of research into a true satanic murder in Long Island, the Ricky Casso case, which fascinated me. Ricky was really one of the pioneers in teen Satanism, one of the first to put together that volatile cocktail of hallucinogenics, heavy metal music, and Satanism as a philosophy, the Satanic Bible, all that Anton LaVey stuff. So, it led to tragedy. But
when did that murder occur?
That murder happened probably in, I think, 84.
It was
maybe?
84, and just because I happened to podcast with one of the members of this band, I know this factoid. Talking about teen flicks, and this song is always associated with teen flicks. The song Teenage Dirtbag is about Ricky Queso.
What?
Is it really?
And the song is about how he felt when he walked through the hallways of school, that everyone looked at him like he was some dirtbag because he listened to the same heavy metal that Ricky listened to. And that's why it's all those shout outs to like the Satanic Panic 80s metal bands in the lyrics and stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it was a really interesting period in pop history.
When you were writing for The Craft, I mean, so like, was this, so Flatliners was that 93, 92? 1990. Okay. How long were you in the because like it really, if you think of, if we think about it, like the guys on this podcast think about it, The Craft really was way ahead of its time because, we have Blair Witch in 99, and that led to the Blair Witch Book of Shadows, which really leaned heavily on what The Craft was doing, and I feel like Wicca was pretty popular by 95, and so I think that there's this constellation of the popularity of Wicca in teen culture right as The Craft came out, because I knew about it right before The Craft came out, and so I mean it felt familiar, it felt interesting, it felt new and cool. I wasn't like practicing or anything like that, but I knew the ins and outs, and if you were already kind of like doing that research in like 1991, that's way ahead of the curve. It's really very interesting.
I finished up on the project in 93, so I had written written all my drafts. I because of my interest in, I was always interested in seekers as protagonists, the people in Flatliners, the characters in that are seekers as well. And Ricky Queso in my mind was one of those types, somebody. And so the idea of magic really appealed to me too. I've always liked to think that maybe there's an extra wrinkle to the world around us. It just makes it all the more interesting. And as I was doing my research into all this stuff, I learned really that historically magic is a last resort of the underclass. Historically people, the powers that be, they had either the church or an army or the king and the aristocrats behind them or in their corner. But then you had all these people of the heath, or the heathens as they became known, who really had nothing. They lived in a straw shack. They had nothing. They were getting kicked around. And those are the people who turn to magic and witchcraft. And that is what I think made The Craft different and unique, was that, it wasn't a bunch of witches in a high school who were like the overlords of everybody, like the Lost Boys, kicking everybody's ass and doing spells at will. My magic was founded in the three cornerstones of magic, which are need, emotion, and knowledge. And these characters in The Craft, they have nowhere else to go. They have each has an individual problem, and they have a real legit character-driven need, which fuels the power. And I remember when Andy Fleming came on as the writer and to take over the script, because like I said, I couldn't really nail that ending for them. I just said, as long as you understand that, to me, the movie isn't even really about witchcraft in some ways. It's about the power of adolescent pain. And he was like, he goes, I get it. It's loud and clear in the script. And off he went, and he did a fabulous job with it, made a million great contributions. And, it became the cult classic that it is today.
Yeah, I also think it's interesting hearing you explain that, because it does make sense that, like, ultimately, and part of this could just be like filming in Los Angeles and how schools look in Los Angeles, but it looks like they go to a very well-off school with a lot of rich kids, and then you see their individual lives, and they're like the people who just happen to get in there by the skin of their teeth, almost like it. Like you get that vibe of like, they're not the outcasts because they're witches because they're outcasts.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. No, that very much so.
The school was based on my high school, St. Bernard's in Uncasville, Connecticut,
Yes.
which was,
Yeah.
its own form of hell for me.
And now that it reads that, I we played them in high school athletics, and seeing the crew that would come out of St. Bernard's always made me uneasy.
They put on they make them wear a tie and wear a skirt, but And
I think they were the only school in that region that was like that. Like I didn't know of a private school or a Catholic school or of anything. I was just always in the public school system. So that's really funny, Peter. I didn't realize that.
I also think that makes an interesting angle for Robin, right? Because where you look at the other three characters, they have always essentially been destined to be in this outcast pile, but with Robin it feels like it's her decision. Like if she decided to go and hang out with the popular kids, she would have been embraced. Even when you just see like Robin's house at the end of the movie comparatively to where the other characters whose homes we've seen, she is the one that's like in a slightly better living situation, and maybe that might also be a slight part of why she doesn't get as overtaken by the corruption of the power, as well as that maybe her need isn't nearly as vengeful and strong as it is running through the other girls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, her need is different. Her mom died when she was giving birth to Robin. Right. And Robin at one point in the past, it's alluded to, had tried to commit suicide. Mm-hmm. So her need is connection with her mom. Mom just happened to have been a witch, a natural witch.
Worked out well.
Yeah. So Robin has that in her, and they are able to make that connection to some degree.
Yeah.
And I think, the characters are also, for me, they were based on the four elements. So Robin is earth, and so she is more grounded, and she is, going to be a little more reliable.
Nev Campbell, is she fire?
No, wind. Nancy's fire.
Yeah, but that makes sense that Nancy's fire because of her personality, but weren't the scars on Nev Campbell's back from like being burnt as a kid?
They were from that, but but her thing was wind, and the wind, the ability in Wicca of foresight or scything is tied with wind. Okay. So she's the first one that senses that our fourth is coming, and she's the first one to spot Robin.
Oh yeah, right at the locker. Right at the locker.
Yeah. Or in the class with the pencil.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Nancy spots the security guard in the locker at the locker, and then
Nancy, of course, is fire because they got that fiery personality and is ready to burn it all down at the end. And Rochelle is water. She is the diver. Yeah. So that was really good for me to have those touchstones, and I think I read a great book at the time called The Goddess in Every Woman, which sort of broke down female archetypes and was helpful in just sort of getting like a framework of, okay, these four come together and that's what's going to complete the circle.
I don't know if there's a more, particularly not just generational. I don't know if there are a few great witch movies, but as far as like seminal and culturally responsible, like The Craft feels like one of them. What is so then? You write this, you sit away from it for a few more years than I had realized, Peter. Honestly, I didn't realize it was 93, and then beyond that, and then it comes out and it starts to gain this following just before we start getting into teen slasher, which then takes off like that. It changes the game completely. What were you feeling sort of professionally and also personally in regards to The Craft when it dropped?
I really liked it. I thought that everybody, I thought the actors and Andy Fleming, the producers, the music, I thought everyone had really done a great job and brought their A game. I thought that there were so many surprises that, people make contributions that, the first guy up can't imagine, or nobody can, and everybody just builds upon each other. And I also feel like I'm never particularly precious about my scripts, because I know that it's a collaborative process, and I embrace that. The Flatliners definitely taught me a lot about that. Even though I saw that one all the way through and was on set every day, at the end of the day, the movie looks different than what you put on paper. So you love them both. Like I liken it to having two kids. You like them, you love them both, but they're different for different reasons. The script and the movie are never really the same.
I think that it's one of those films for people of, especially like, the three of us, the hosts of this show, for our demographic. It was like a film that really did cross these boundaries of like, even people who aren't horror fans have this weird love of this movie. And I think it's because you got so much of that human stuff, but then also credit has to just go to the direction of like, anytime that The Craft comes up, there's one specific moment that I feel like everyone talks about, which is Neve Campbell's scars just peeling smoothly off of her skin in that scene. 'Cause it just like sticks in your head. It's such an interesting concept, and like the way it's shot and the way it like when I feel like as a writer there's no way that in your head you were just like, this scene where the scars come off is going to be something that people talk about 30 years after the movie comes out. But like, yet with the right director and the right script, it becomes this like powerful moment that's embedded in people's brains.
It's interesting because he's not known as a horror director. Yeah. He hasn't, he's much more of a drama guy. I know he's working on the show Emily in Paris. Interesting. And that's probably the brilliance of, I think, the producer, is to bring in, I had seen Andy's film Threesome, which was an indie drama, about three kids in college who have a threesome, kind of like the French film I can't think of right now. But it was really great characters. And I was just saying the producer's really smart to bring in someone like this instead of just a straight up genre director, and really lean into the characters and like you say, Matt, those moments, making them less like gore and more emotionally resonant.
Yeah, it's also now that I'm looking at it, because I guess I forgot to do this when we were researching this, but just looking at Andrew's film credits in general is really unique, because you're right that he had a little bit of horror clout before this by doing Bad Dreams, but then that
blew me away, by the way.
6 years later does Threesome, like you said, and then it's this, and then really never does a horror film re-enter his sphere again. He, I think the next biggest films that he worked on was Dick, the comedy with Michelle Williams and Kirsten Dunst, and like Hamlet too. Like, he became a little bit more of a comedy and drama guy from that point. Right. It is, but I think that that's a good thing, because when I think about The Craft, while it does have the horror stuff, a lot of his stuff is like young adult comedy stuff, and that we'll get into it when we do double features, but like that 96 to 98 period of film, that was what was selling horror movies, was the horror movies that felt like they could be teen comedies as well, that just happened to have murder and mayhem in them.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting, because I was told that when directors were circling my script, David Fincher was interested.
Really?
And that was very early in his career.
Yeah.
And you know, what a different, darker film that would have been.
Yeah.
You know,
Completely.
Completely. You know, I think it would have been fabulous because he's such an amazing director. But I don't know, would it have had the legs and would it have touched the way Andy did? I don't, you know, it would have been very, very different. But I just think Andy, I don't know. I think it just clicked for him. I think he did a great job.
Yeah. I also think that if like someone like David Fincher touches this movie, it also becomes just a footnote in a very long filmographer's career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just like a fun factoid.
We talked about Alien 3, whatever, like 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, I mean, as big as that of a movie that is, but it's like, it kind of just does become a footnote in some ways compared to some of his other films, and it's like it doesn't stick out.
Alien 3 becomes regulated as this weird film before this amazing director went off to make like multiple award-winning big box office smashes, and I feel like The Craft would just be this weird footnote of like, hey, did you know that that before he did Zodiac, Dave Fincher made like a teen witch movie once? Like,
right. The timeline would be very strange.
Yes.
No doubt. Yeah. But, and then Peter, I mean, that's also a testament to what you're talking about with collaboration though, too. You know what I mean? It sounds like Andrew like really came in as a collaborative effort. And of course you still had notes and studio things and all those things that you had to go at bat for or against or whatever. But the film is a collaboration, and you sort of giving that blessing, asking what you want out of what the script was, and hopes that he takes that and runs with it, and he does. I mean, what you're talking about, you know, high school is such a great parallel for the class system that you were talking about in the research that you did just about magic and about why people use magic. I mean, is there a better like parallel than fucking high school? Like when everything is the most everything is life or death in high school, and this becomes truly life or death, but based on their feelings. But
I ended up writing and directing a film based on the Casso murder case years after The Craft, called Ricky Six, which you can find on YouTube. It never really got distribution, but it had its moments. And there's a scene where just shot in a high school hallway, and the character says sort of the satanic character Ricky would have loved high school if he had, you know, hung in there, because nowhere do people live by the satanic code more openly. You know, blessed are the powerful and the pretty and the everything else, and cursed is everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, so,
truly.
You're right. That high school is really a great environment for magic and the need for magic. And like you said, everything's a first. Everything's so raw. The emotion is.
Well, and I feel like we don't dive into stuff like this as much. This is definitely on our network. We have another podcast called Fright School that's all about looking at horror films through a queer lens. But obviously the fact that Andrew himself is gay, I think, has to put a little bit more empathy into each one of these characters feeling like an outcast inside their school, like giving him that ability to have so much empathy for these characters, which is why, like, even with Nancy, as unhinged as Nancy gets, you really never dislike any of these characters at any point in the movie. You're like, no, I get it. Your classmates kind of suck. Like, I get it.
Yeah. Well, Nancy has a hellacious home life, and she's gutsy. She's ballsy, you know? I mean, people are like, I think as a viewer, you watch it and you know, if I was getting beat on or picked on or outcast or taken advantage, you know, even if I didn't have magic, I hope I could be that ballsy and just flip a finger at everybody the way.
And there's still joy in her powers, you know, like there's still joy that she has. There's the giggling in the classroom. There's all of this stuff that, despite the home life, it feels like, you know, that group of friends that will become a coven is safe and fun and like the place to be. So there's a development of empathy and connection with all of those characters who have just that slight outside, well, not slight, but just outside of the norm scenarios that they're in. Do you have a favorite moment that has come out of the final film, Peter, that you that you really like?
I have a lot of not a favorite. One of the emotional sort of scenes that I really like is when they are all getting together on the beach to do the big conjuring that's on the slide behind you, Kyle. And I just like it because it's before they start to fracture, and it's all four of them together at the height of their power and camaraderie, and each is holding an animal that's sort of symbolic of their power. Air has a butterfly, somebody has a fish, water has the fish, Nancy has a snake, Sarah, I think she has a bird. That was originally going to be wind, I think, but regardless, I don't know, it's just kind of cool. They're going out on the beach, and for me, that was the big moment in the screenplay, because that's where earth meets wind meets water meets fire. Yeah. Where earth meets wind meets water, we bring fire. And that's basically what that whole ceremony is about. And I love seeing the four of them as a team. Any of those moments. When the light as a feather, stiff as a board. Watching Bewitched, and any of the moments when they're a team, or walking around. I guess Andy, the studio, he had to sell the studio on the project and his directing, from what he told me, and he shot like the slow motion shot of them walking towards the camera through the hallway in their outfits. When they saw that shot, he said they just got it.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, we're making the movie.
Yeah. And I mean, that shot is everywhere. How many dorm rooms had a poster of that, around, and
it's a great shot. It's just, it's one of those archetype, it's like, I'm not going to put it up there with Easy Rider when the two guys, but it's that type of shot. I
don't think it's out of the conversation, honestly.
Yeah, I would take it over Easy Rider any day. All right.
Think about how rare it is to literally have a poster be a scene ripped straight out of the movie. Right? It's only for the most iconic, memorable moments where someone can look at a single shot and be like, that's all we need to sell this movie. Usually it's some collage of images, it's some special drawing, it's some special image. That's the joke nowadays, is every poster is just Photoshop of multiple actors' faces under a generic background. But to just be no, we're just going to pull this scene, we're going to throw the title at the top, and that is the poster, and we will win the hearts of every teenager that buys a ticket just from that singular image.
Truly.
Yeah, it totally speaks to Andy's visual prowess and just nailing it, just feeling it and nailing it.
Matt, you had mentioned the peeling of the scars, but I don't necessarily know if that's your favorite scene. Is there a scene that you like? And then Scott, I'm coming for you next.
Honestly, the part that I always remember is just basically the whole third act, when all hell breaks loose and they're just torturing Robin in her house, and the snakes coming out of the sink was the one that I remember from the trailer scaring me as a kid, just being whoa, that's creepy.
We had to use real animals back in those days.
Yeah. Exactly.
We had an insect wrangler and a snake wrangler.
Yeah, I want to know what the snake budget was.
Wasn't all the CGI that you would use today. So,
although there are CGI snake fingers.
Yes,
that one had to happen.
Those were not wrangled by a human.
There was there was no Dr. Moreau yet for these snake fingers to exist. That's true. I remember the maggots bubbling out of that pot was just in that whole scene was just, oh god, it gave me the ick. Scott, what about you?
This is gonna sound so silly, but when her stepdad, or mom's live-in boyfriend dies, and then they get $175,000. They get this new apartment, and the mom. I love that you can take the mom out of I apologize for the term, the trailer park, but you can't take the trailer park out of the mom, because she's still kind of got that. It's just basically the ultra nouveau riche concept there where
Right.
she's like, what did she want? If she was going to have money, she wanted to have a jukebox that only played Connie Francis. Now, I was 14 when this movie came out, and two things I want to say about it. One, for a movie with four arguably gorgeous women, this movie wasn't like sexy, and I think that's it. Like, it wasn't a sexualizing movie for and I loved that. I love that about it now. I never really thought about it when I watched it as a 14-year-old, but I mean, I find that to be such a wonderful. I think it also makes it feel more honest that they're, it's about their friendship. It's about the tribulations of being in high school, things like that. But additionally, it made me look up Connie Francis because I had no idea who she was when this movie came out.
I love when Nancy goes behind her mother.
Yeah. This movie, though, that's the thing about this movie is I have quoted this movie with male and female friends since it came out obsessively. Like, it's so quotable, shotgun to the back of the mom and the just like the sorry. I literally saw a meme that was just that this morning. It's crazy, like the legs that this has, and it's not like this has any reason to be back in the cultural consciousness. Like, it doesn't have, like the Craft remake, or I guess it's not a remake. It was a
legacy, like a legacy sequel.
Craft Legacy.
Yeah. They literally put legacy as the subtitle, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, okay.
That came out, what, like 3 years ago at this point? I think it's 2020.
No, it was like pandemic time.
So 2021?
Yeah, I want to say it was 2020 even.
Well, in any case, that's far enough removed that
it was 2020, 4 years ago.
People aren't. That's not in the cultural consciousness. This movie just exists. It doesn't need another movie or like anything to remind people of how notable and memorable it is. And I think a lot of that, I agree that the direction and the acting and the visual effects, like, all play into that, but the writing really, and I don't know how much of that was kept. I mean, like, how much of the literal dialogue was kept, but I just feel like so much of that, the attention to detail and the puzzle pieces shine through when you watch it as an adult. Like, I was drawn to it as a teen, but as an adult, you get a glimpse behind like why it was so successful and important for so many people.
When it comes to dialogue and little moments like that, sometimes it's actors improvising, and that's another beautiful thing about filmmaking is that nobody knows your characters better than the actor who's playing them, ideally.
Yeah, I was about to say.
And a lot of times they come to you, with ideas about their character, and you would be foolish not to listen because it gets to the point where it's your own character talking back to you and saying, I would do this, or maybe I would say this, or maybe, and, I've had the privilege of working with some really, really great actors over the years in the Flatliners and the Craft and Chapel Waite and Ricky Six, Vincent Kartheiser and Chad Christ, and just really, really good actors. Adrian Brody and Chapel Waite. They're a tremendous resource when it comes to great dialogue, I'll tell you that.
No doubt. So actually, just on that and on the film having legs, I mean, I think I know the answer here, Peter, but did you foresee this having such legs? Could you imagine could you imagine coming on Horror Movie Night 30 years ago and to talk about, with three other white guys, to talk about the Craft?
Yeah, probably not. It's funny because you don't, you write a movie, you try to make it or direct a movie, whatever you do, you try to make it the best film you can possibly make at the time with what you have. But you don't get to pick what becomes a cult hit. That's 100% up to the audience. Mm-hmm. And so you just put it out there and you just don't know if they decide to embrace it for whatever reason, that's them, and And I've been lucky that it's happened for me a couple times, but it's a mystery. Like you just do your best at the time. You try. If you're living, if you're living in the time, if you're writing honestly, you have a better chance. If you're asking honest questions or expressing honest needs in the themes of your stories, you have a better chance of connecting with the zeitgeist or with the audience. But it's a mystery. You just don't know. And I'm just grateful that everything came together the way it did, and the film still speaks to people.
Yeah. It also has, if we're talking about iconic, we've discussed it on the show before, an iconic banger of a soundtrack as well.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Just filled with great covers as well as originals. Especially that Our Lady Peace cover of Tomorrow Never Ends by the Beatles, I think, gave me a new appreciation of it. But then you also have the weird crossover of this Love Spit Love cover of How Soon Is Now that then became the theme song to the to Charmed. Just continuing that witch lineage from the screen to TV.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
Hey Mark, I was listening to Paramore the other day, and it really made me think about the amygdala and the limbic system.
You just made those words up, didn't you?
What, Paramore?
We're the Nevermind the Music podcast, where one musician
and one psychologist
talk songwriting and the mind, one song at a time.
We'll hear everything from Green Day and Outkast
to Stevie Wonder and Dua Lipa.
And we mostly try to stay on topic.
Except for when we don't want to.
Nevermind the Music, wherever you get your podcasts.
And, we've heaped a lot of praise on how great of a watch this is, but it raises a really interesting question. And that question is, if you were to watch this with a group of people and they wanted one more, what would you double feature this movie with? And Kyle, this is technically your pick.
Yeah.
So I'll let you decide if you want to go first or pass the ball to Peter.
I'll go last.
Okay. We'll give you a little bit of time, Peter.
Okay.
So Scott, you had actually mentioned it, and it is truly the B movie to The Craft. But Blair Witch: Book of Shadows continues with the banger soundtrack.
Yeah.
It continues with, I think, where we leave off at the height of what The Craft does in crazy terms. It takes that and then also gives it the R rating and gives it just the sort of misunderstood thing. And it has a lot of fun with it. It's also still a little bit of, there's a little meta, which I don't think The Craft necessarily wears on its sleeve. But I do think that there is this self-referential, or it's these kids are studying a thing that exists. It's not Wicca and witchcraft doesn't have a place in culture, but it just happens to be smaller at that time. And then Blair Witch: Book of Shadows has this meta turn on mixing the actual witchcraft with the horror movie element and the horror urban legend element of it. I think it would be a fun B picture to The Craft. What about you, Scott?
I am so sorry, Peter. I am going to do the double feature that I did in high school, which is start with The Craft and then watch Little Witches. And Little Witches is an absolute horrible ripoff of this movie. But the craziest part about it, I didn't even realize until we were talking about it right now, which is that Jennifer Rubin, who was the lead in Bad Dreams, which was Andrew's first directorial debut, is the head nun / teacher at the Catholic school
weird.
where the girls do little witches. That movie is not good. I rewatched a little bit of it. I rewatched maybe the first 15 minutes yesterday because I was like, oh, it's on Tubi. Holy shit, I think it's Tubi. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. I even remember at 14 or 15, I think it was 1997, because it was literally like off of the back of the success of The Craft that they threw this movie together, probably in 20 days, you know? And I remember watching it immediately when it came out on video, because I'm pretty sure it was a direct-to-video type thing, and being like, wow, that was super underwhelming. And it didn't get better with age. So I apologize that I'm kind of throwing your masterpiece in with
a nostalgia
a very Z-grade movie. But it would definitely be a fun night.
It is all about having fun.
What about you, Matt?
So this is going to be rough, but I've attended this double feature. I've got a serious one and a joke one. This is my serious one. And I think it's just that, Peter, you indirectly, with the help of this movie, changed the entire landscape of how horror films were written for almost 5 years. So I feel like the only appropriate double feature is to follow this up with Scream. And I think that that's noteworthy. I just did a ton of research in the last 30 seconds. I'm telling you, the amount of research, when I say this next sentence, I think you'll understand what I mean. But like, this movie came out 6 months before Scream, but I feel like so much of the narrative is that this came out after Scream, and I feel like the reason is that for whatever reason, the VHS for The Craft didn't come out until July of 97, and Scream came out in May or June of 97
on
VHS. So I feel like when it came time to promote the home video, they were just like, hey, you know that Nev Campbell that you love so much in Scream? She's also in this.
I do see the steam coming out from underneath your headphones as you figured out that timeline. That's wild.
It was that combination of Nev Campbell and Skeet Ulrich in these two very specific movies with a very unique language that I keep talking about. Of like, Friday the 13th was fairly recently, so I sat down and watched a couple of those old Friday the 13th movies, and there was just something that you guys were able to strike gold with The Craft and with Scream, and furthermore with, like, I Know What You Did Last Summer, like, which was that the characters in Friday the 13th and most of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies are absolutely annoying and you can't wait to see them die. But like, these movies crafted such likable characters that you're rooting for them the whole time. You feel emotions when things don't go well for them. Like, and it really kind of stayed that way until like Saw in 2001 was like, the movies were like, we want likable characters that the audience is going to get behind. And your film really is like the forefront of that shift. So I feel like you have to double feature those two. But my joke double feature would be Batman Forever, because Nancy's fate is exactly the same as Jim Carrey's at the end of Batman Forever.
Okay. Is that the one Joel Schumacher directed?
That's one of the Joel Schumacher ones. That's the one where literally at the very end, he's insisting that he knows who Batman is, and he's in Arkham Asylum, and he's converted his straitjacket into a bat suit, and he's just running around yelling, "I'm Batman, I can fly." So it's like, oh.
That's funny, because Joel directed Flatliners.
Yeah,
he did.
And he was a big part of my cinema education.
I mean, and directed Lost Boys, which like is a pretty good opposite coin of The Craft as well in a certain way. But I hope we haven't taken your double feature choice, Peter.
No, mine. It may be a bit obscure. It's from 2021 called Hellbender.
Love it.
That was on my list too. That movie.
Love that movie.
It rules.
Yeah. You guys, all right.
We've interviewed.
So you are horror guys.
We've interviewed the Addams Family on this podcast.
You have?
Yeah.
I gotta get that. I gotta listen. to
that was to promote Hellbender specifically.
Oh wow, I'm a huge fan of theirs. I just love what they're doing up there. I love the invention of Hellbender, the mythology. I love that basically during COVID, they jumped in a van and drove cross country filming in various national parks and just wild stuff with, Toby Poser walking around and Zelda and Lulu and John. I just think it's so cool that, I just think they're very cool. I think they're very inventive. I think they're everything right about indie film.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of theirs. So Hellbender, yeah, that's one I would recommend.
Love that.
I think it's the best witch movie since The Witch.
Nice.
Man, Peter, you are on the absolute dot with everything that I agree. I mean, I've never agreed with someone so much in my life. I love witch movies, but there are so few good ones.
Scott's right. There are so few good witch movies. I think that, because there is so much history that gets that can work in your favor or can absolutely work against you. And I think a lot of times it probably works against you. That's why there's like 14 or 15 witchcraft movies. But there's no good. None of them are good.
No good witchcraft movies.
Right. I think it's one of those genres. We've mentioned it with werewolf movies too, where it's like such a hard target to hit perfectly that when someone does it right, it's like universally decided is great.
Yeah, no doubt.
But people keep going back to it because it's interesting mythology. Well, Peter, we're about at the end of the episode, but let's talk about the shorts that you have that Kyle assisted with, some of the places that people can see it, a little bit of what they're about.
Well, when I left Los Angeles, moved back east, and sort of on a bit of a lark, decided to, during COVID, I met an actor in the dog park, Roger Clark, who had this great voice, and he had this long hair. He sounded like an Irish biker, and I didn't realize it, but he was the guy who played in motion capture for 3 or 4 years, Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh.
And so he had a huge following in the gaming community, and I said, instead of just standing around here sitting on our hands or whatever, why don't we make a movie? So I wrote something up, and we did a short film, which Kyle AD'd, and a lot of local people in our small town and area pitched in on. And we did a film called Hazardous, which you can see on YouTube if you do Hazardous short film. And then a couple years after that, everyone started to get restless again and said, let's do another. Or when are we going to do another? So we just finished one, and it's called Damn Handy. And it's played in a few festivals so far. It's sort of in the middle of its festival run. Next up is Santa Fe, I think, and then maybe Sleepy Hollow up in Tarrytown, New York. So I'm very excited about both those festivals. We just got back from Cincinnati Horror Hound, and which was great, so Block Island, Mystic. So we're sort of making the rounds with it, and it's really become a fun part of my life, of because it takes so long to get something made, typically from script to screen, that you just feel as though life is passing you by. So I've decided to sort of start making little things myself, and who knows, I'm hoping that maybe I can blow it out into something bigger someday soon.
Well, again, I to wax your car a little bit, Peter, because you're here, and because I can. You've agreed to this, so now it's part of it. But you do, you spoke so highly about the collaboration of, making the craft, and you really, that has so clearly stuck with you. I think I'll speak for that whole crew, saying how much of a joy it is to have worked on those sets with you, because you do encourage that, and you ask for that, and you give people a voice. We've talked about this at some of the film festivals. I'm sure you will continue to, but a lot of those department heads were up and coming people, or people who have not been in that world. Some of them were in high school actively. It was like, our effects person was a high school student who, Peter really gave a shot, and not just gave a shot to be like, hey, I need, a cut on somebody's face, but, worked with and gave, artistic creativity and sort of gave a voice to allowing them to work on that stuff and to make it the best that it could be. And I think, it's something that I really admired by working with you on that. And I'm excited to go on and above and beyond the shorts that we've made and see what else can happen with the basis of collaboration, with the basis of like everybody coming together to make a thing. I think that's it's hard to find out there, and you've nurtured and cultivated a very nice environment for that on these past 2 short films. So, I don't know what the future of Damn Handy holds beyond this festival run, and you might not be at liberty to speak about that. But as soon as it's out, we'll make sure that everybody sees it in our horror movie night circle, for sure.
Yeah, I've always taken exception to the a film by credit on any picture. I find it a little insulting to all the people who put their creative, who contribute. And I mean, there are countless, right? Every department, every assistant, everybody's, you never know where a good idea is going to come from. And believe me, in all these, a film by Joe Blow or Sarah Smith, they didn't come up with all the great ideas on screen.
Yeah.
So I've never liked that credit. And I think that I'm very open to collaboration. I like to give, like you said, Kyle, everybody a voice, because it is ultimately our film.
So yeah, as soon as that's out and ready, we will let our listeners know and spread the word. But Peter, I mean, thank you so much for joining us to talk about The Craft.
This is awesome.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. As we're coming up on Halloween,
it was just perfect.
What a great way to kick off the season with you guys. Yeah. I really, it's been a joy, a pleasure.
Thank you. Where can people follow along with you in any particular capacity? Do you do social media, Peter? No, they can't follow you. Don't try to find him. It's a fucking, he doesn't want to hear from you. He's nice on set, but he does not want to hear from you. Do not. I'm just kidding. Firesight Films, I suppose, is the place where you can find Hazardous, or Hazardous Short Film on YouTube is the place where you can find that. And any other places where.
If you follow Roger Clark, the actor, he's usually posting a bunch of stuff. He's very active on social media, and he'll. That's a good way to track any of our projects down.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.